This is the emissary. Why India was supposed to be communist. And I'm curious for this. I like the emissary and how he tackles information and like how he goes about it. I'm going to check this out. I'm going to check this out.
India was supposed to be communist. By every measure of Marxists, India had the perfect ingredients for the cocktail of communism. Colonial extraction, crushing poverty, the most rigid hereditary hierarchy on earth. India was ripe for revolution. Karl Marx himself highlighted India's potential. Vladimir Lenin urged Indians to act on that potential. And when the Communist Party of India was founded in 1920, Moscow was certain a revolution was nigh. Yet today, India is governed by Hindu nationalists. The communist parties hold a combined total of 4 out of 553 seats in parliament. Communism has resoundingly failed, or so it seems.
Well, honestly, the way I see it, a communism will never truly function because people in the end are going to be the root of all problems. And communism needs more of a equal shake for everyone.
In this video, we're going to explore a paradox. While the Communist Party of India has lost, many of its ideas have flourished, some even in the most unlikely of places. This is the story of communism in India. Somewhere in early 20th century Bengal, a group of young men were being initiated into a secret society. They're about to swear an oath to revolution. But the book they swear on is not Das Kapital. It is the Bhagavad Gita. And it's this contradiction that communism would never truly resolve. But to understand that, we have to rewind a bit. The greatest irony of India's independence movement is that it was created by the British. That's because the British ruled India not by importing a bunch of Englishmen into India, but by creating homegrown brown Englishmen. And no, this is not some transracial thing. The concept of a brown Englishman was created by an official named Thomas Macaulay. Macaulay claimed that Britain needed a class of persons Indian in blood and color, but English in tastes, opinions, morals, and intellect. These brown Englishmen would be the local administrators for the British. They would help foreigners rule and oppress their own people. So how does communism figure into this? Well, the twist here is that Indians actually learned about communism from the British. Indians who were being educated in English now learned about European philosophy and ideas. People like Locke, Mazzini, and of course, Marx. Many Indians who were training to be foot soldiers of the empire had an epiphany midway through their education. They realized that liberty, freedom, and nationalism weren't just European values, they were universal. So they quit and decided to organize a revolution. For these early Indian revolutionaries, colonialism meant capitalism, and Marxism was decolonization. However, Marxism was just one of many ideologies these ex-brown Englishmen found inspiration from. Italian nationalists, Irish revolutionaries, French liberals all influenced these young freedom fighters. But the foundation of the revolutionary ethos was unmistakably Indian.
Was that Bhagat Singh? Bhagat? Is that right? I think that was
Indian
him.
revolutionaries organized themselves into groups. The most famous was the Anushilan Samiti, based in Bengal, the base of the British Indian Empire. And to join the revolution of the Anushilan Samiti, you had to swear on the Bhagavad Gita, as we saw earlier. The Samiti had regular Gita readings. It inculcated the ideal of a Kshatriya, or religious warrior ethos. It drew inspiration from saints like Vivekananda, who saw the message of the Gita as that of action and revolution. Even non-Hindu participants would be influenced by these tales, as they are fundamentally Indian tales of heroism. The Indian independence, and especially revolutionary movement, was inseparable from this book. And thus Indian Marxists not only had to, but wanted to understand Marxism and revolution through a religious vocabulary. So religious fervor was frequently fused with Marxist ideas around labor and economics in India. For example, India's first major labor strikes were not for better wages, but for the release of someone named Lokmanya Tilak, a revolutionary who again used the Bhagavad Gita as an axis of revolt. Laborers had been inspired by Tilak's commentary of the Gita to take up arms against the British. India's first trade union was founded by a deeply...
Again, this is like commonplace, where people will use the information from whatever text and utilize, don't want to say Western concept, because communism is just something that's just been around and will always be around, just like capitalism has been around and will always be around, just like socialism has been around and will always be around, just like every single thing of power, monarchies, patriarchies, what's the female version? I don't even know the female version of like a female-led patriarchy, matriarchy. That's what it would be. The fact that I needed to do gymnastics for that. There's always going to be some kind of avenue. There's always existed and will always exist, and you'll never completely get rid of it. Like, I think there's a matriarchy society in like Africa somewhere. It's like the only living, constant running matriarchy in existence. But the thing is, like, this stuff, you will always see people take an ideology, see how it works, and realize that they can utilize it through their own banner. This happens through religion and things like that. Like when the Roman Empire saw that Christianity was on the uprise, they decided to utilize it and input it into their structure completely, getting rid of their, well, not getting rid of the Roman gods. Their Roman gods transitioned into the saints. They just changed the names of them. And then Catholicism became like the core belief of the entire Roman Empire. It was just completely indoctrinated because Christianity was literally like a virus sweeping through the nations at that point in time. So they adopted it early and turned it into their own thing. And to this day, the Roman Empire still exists in the Vatican. In the Vatican. I like to joke like that. But people will always utilize these tactics. So people who create the ideals and everything will never have full control of the execution of their ideals. Because we're the ideas from Karl Marx, or like when you go through like Nietzsche and things like that, are the ideals. Do they sound sound? Do they sound great? Sure. The problem is it's always in the execution. The execution, the way people utilize it and take advantage of it for themselves. Again, it's always the humans, which will always be the problem. Which will always be the problem. Because humans will always try to find something in order to do it for themselves. Whether for good or ill, it's always for themselves. Always for themselves. Like just like with the Indian freedom fighters, they were doing it for their people, which is great. The problem is like there will always be people that are in it doing it just for themselves, just for their own namesake. And that's the thing. It's just like, how far do things go? Like what is the line from The Dark Knight? You either live long enough to see what? You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Because that is the case. Eventually you go too far that you end up taking from the structure you've put into place. That's one thing I find so great about the United States of America. We had no set term limit. George Washington, after 2 terms, stepped down. He stepped down. People would have kept electing him, but he stepped down and allowed another person to be voted in. And it kind of started, not until like FDR, who served 4 terms as president. 4 terms. He died in his 4th term. This was during World War II. That they put in place a 2-term limit. Because we couldn't have that ever happen again. Too many problems were initiated during FDR's time. Sure, it was a hectic time, but too many things were initiated. We had a system in place that people were respecting. But then eventually, someone disrespected it, and then we needed to instill an actual term limit. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Literally, the words to live by. Words to live by. You always want to make sure you step out before you become the problem. But yeah, they literally took the ideals and had placed them in there, because no matter what, you can look at the Bible and find socialism in that. You could look at the Quran and find socialism in that. You could find capitalism in the Bible and the Quran. You could find the Bhagavad Gita. You could find it everywhere. You could find it everywhere. But the thing is, it's us humans looking at the text and putting it into it. Heck, people were finding the Bible in Harry Potter. That's the thing. We put our own ideals into things. So they literally took the communism and placed it in their own scriptures. Which there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem is it can lead to problems down the line.
Religious man, Lala Lajpat Rai. When Indians were boycotting British goods, they weren't just driven by economic arguments, but rather a civilizational and religious rhetoric. Aurobindo Ghosh, another product of the Anushīlan Samiti, writes that the process of boycott was akin to a yajna, a fire ritual of purification and sacrifice. So in the early 20th century, Indian communism was a decentralized force, and because of that, you see a lot of ideological blending and promiscuity. Now, a lot of people point to the famous Marxist and martyr Bhagat Singh as the face of Indian Marxism. Singh even wrote a famous pamphlet, Why I Am an Atheist, which people point to as proof of Marxism's penetration in India. But the thing is, Singh's fellow comrades in organizations like the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association were chock full of religious people. Singh was exceptional exactly because he was an atheist. His fellow socialists who went to the gallows with him were all religious. So essentially, since its beginning, Indian communism has had this uneasy relationship with religion. But that is only the first piece of an entirely mismatched outfit for revolution. For the second, we have to examine a man who became a god.
Became a god, ugh.
A fundamental aspect of Marxism is being able to organize the masses, forging the common people into a great hammer that shatters elite power, a swelling surge of popular revolution. In independence-era India, only one man could do this. Mahatma Gandhi understood the average Indian better than anyone of his time. Where earlier revolutionaries fused religion with armed resistance, Gandhi weaponized something more powerful, non-violent resistance. Same spiritual sheath, different weapon. And with this, Gandhi captured the hearts and minds of India's masses. Now, while this was happening, communism in India was formalizing. At the 1920 Comintern Congress, a global communist conference, the Communist Party of India was founded. This foreign birth would haunt them for the rest of their history. For Indian communist leadership just could not grasp the pulse of Indian society, especially during independence. The biggest reason for this was that Indian communists were basically remote controlled. Whether from Moscow or from communist cells in Britain, the CPI would always wait for their input on policy, and by that time it would be too late. The CPI disregarded local...
Yeah, I'm aware of that. I just saw the Sandman video on it. Yeah, that's the problem. They literally had a plant from foreign nations dictating how the Communist Party should function. It's already baked into failure. It's already baked in failure, right there. Something can only exist as long as it's the created and adopted and widely accepted from the people themselves. I can't go to Japan and start trying to push some kind of Buddhist mindset to the people there. I mean, I could try, but the thing is, it wouldn't take. It wouldn't take. Sure, a small group might follow me, but it wouldn't take root. As if, let's say, someone in Japan started doing started embodying Buddhism, became like the Dalai Lama, and literally embodied everything imaginable, and everyone started just it feels more to the people, because guess what? It's homegrown. People like something that's homegrown. It's just the truth of it. Most people don't like foreign ops. They want something homegrown.
Sentiments and realities to impress people abroad. This is a very familiar phenomenon to the present day for those who follow.
No, this is not the new stream time. This is just the fact that since I'm still recovering, whenever I wake up and I feel good enough to stream, I stream, because I still recovering. As soon as I get back, I'll get back to my regular schedule. It's just I'm sleeping a lot.
I call this the SAR syndrome, where Indians, particularly leftists, always look to foreigners for approval. This meant the CPI would always be in disarray. One of the biggest fish.
And the sad thing is, this still happens to this day. This still happens to this day. They look to outside for approval. They hate themselves because their approval is only gratified when it comes from outside, not their own.
In the CPI was when its Muslim members decided to support an Islamist uprising in India called the Khilafat movement. This movement was not for Indian independence. Rather, it was to support the Ottoman Sultanate thousands of miles away who were fighting the British. Naturally, many non-Muslim CPI members felt some type of way, especially after the Khilafat movement failed and the Muslim masses flocked to Islamist parties instead of the communists. While Gandhi went from strength to strength as the independence movement went on, the CPI's constant flip-flopping on supporting or opposing Congress and their mixed message on Indian realities like religion and agriculture meant the party missed out on garnering support. The latter part is important because the CPI looked to foreign communism for models of revolution. They ended up focusing on India's tiny urban proletariat that worked in factories rather than the millions of peasants that Gandhi was winning over. Yet this dysfunction would pale in comparison to what happened next. And this wouldn't be a simple political miscalculation. It was a betrayal that mortally wounded the mission of communism in India. In 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union, an event that would reverberate across the world. All of a sudden, communists in every country decided to support not just the USSR, but also the Allied powers in World War II. And of course, this also included Britain. At the same time, Gandhi, the heart of India's independence movement, decided to press forward in his mission. He declared the Quit India movement, a do-or-die moment where he urged Indians to push for independence in every non-violent way possible. Indian masses responded with utmost fervor. Protests erupted across the land. Students walked out of classes. Railway workers went on strike. Every part of India exploded for freedom. Well, almost every part. One of the big...
See, what was I saying when I watched like Sandman's CJP? Like with the fasting and everything? One person cannot make it work. One person, no. You have to move an entire group of people. He's being made a martyr because nobody else cares. It's a joke. It's a joke at this point, instead of it actually being taken seriously. What happened here? Everyone understood the points. Everyone understood the need to not work anymore. Everyone understood the need to not show up to work, to protest, to stand against tyranny. Everyone understood, and everyone acted upon it. Again, a government cannot function when its people do nothing. When its people don't stand behind them. A government cannot function. So the government had to capitulate and allow the people to their own freedom. You can easily see the parallels between wouldn't be parallels because they're not exactly the same. Like completely going off the trails. This one, well orchestrated, the people listen, the people follow it along, and then you have the CJP protests going on. What do you have? You have a man literally starving himself for days, begging everyone else around him to fast, to post on social media that they're fasting as well, because he's the only one there. As everyone's having a picnic and eating around him, he's starving himself in full view of everybody. Compared to this, where everyone heard, everyone stopped going to work, everyone went up in protest instead of doing a whole party as someone's starving themselves. It goes completely different. YouTube just nuked the dislike button on shorts. Now it just shows a heart. Oh my gosh. I don't know what YouTube's doing.
His opponents of this movement was the Communist Party of India. You see, Moscow had issued a diktat that communists across the globe must support the Allied powers, even if that meant overriding decolonial ambitions. So CPI members ended up supporting the British, very enthusiastically in fact. They published propaganda against various freedom fighters. But beyond pamphlets of propaganda and official opposition towards Indian freedom, perhaps the worst thing the CPI did was during the calamitous Bengal famine of 1943. Churchill directed precious grain resources from Bengal to be directed towards the British war effort. And in many cases, it was way more than soldiers needed. So where do communists come in here? Well, communists were an integral part in procuring, or maybe I should say looting, Indian farmers for grain, further worsening the Bengal famine. This is SAR syndrome on another level at this point. It's literally taking precious food from your own countrymen to support your colonizer. And this wasn't taken too kindly by mainstream independence activists either, who would later issue a charge sheet detailing communist treason once India gained freedom. At this point, you'd think the communists were done for. Open betrayal, blatantly anti-national behavior in a time of crisis, a complete rupture with other freedom fighters. Yet the communists actually bounced back. In 1952, India's first election saw them as the second biggest party, albeit fairly small at 16 seats out of 499. The Congress Party, the main vehicle for India's freedom, swept elections. So why did communism persist? It's two main reasons. Firstly, it had local successes. The communists actually succeeded in executing an armed revolution in the South Indian princely state of Hyderabad. The success came because Hyderabad was ruled by a tiny Urdu-speaking Muslim elite who practiced extreme feudalism. The Telugu Hindu masses were crushed by this dynamic. Besides this inequality, the Nizam of Hyderabad tried to join Pakistan, so the newly formed government of India inadvertently aided the communists in deposing the Nizam. Still, many communists were wary about the government of India. While participating in the 1952 elections, many supported a continued armed resistance underground, drawing inspiration from the recently successful Mao Zedong. This eventually evolved into the brutal Naxalite movement. Elsewhere, communists also succeeded in places like Bengal and Kerala. We'll dive into those three soon as they're absolutely fascinating. The second big reason for communism's persistence was that India's first prime minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, was a committed socialist and genuinely admired Marxism. He saw the Soviet Union as a role model and would concretize socialist policy into the foundations of the Indian state. 5-year plans, state-owned industries, central planning. Nehru was building a socialist economy without the Communist Party. Again, this all seems like we're setting up for an explosion of communism. But the CPI would soon commit a second betrayal, and this would be much more brazen. In 1962, Communist China and India would go to war over land in the Himalayas. Nehru believed that the two Asiatic powers would be natural friends, so he left the Himalayan border barely defended, while China did not accept the current border, claiming it was a colonial invention by the British. So an unprepared Indian army would be defeated by Chinese forces as China took control of a small portion of Indian land. And a large chunk of the CPI actually supported this. This caused not only a split in the CPI, but a huge tarnishing of the party. Indians were disgusted with this open betrayal, while a reeling Congress Party looked for someone to blame, in this case probably accurately. This loss was a traumatic event for a young Indian nation, but ironically even worse for Indian communism. This second bout of treason begins a long dotted line across Indian history, where Indian communists, or even the Indian left at large, continuously goes against core Indian interests and progress simply for the approval of outside ideologies. Like, it's understandable to want your ideology to win in your country, but it's another thing to actively want harm to your countrymen in order to secure that ideological win.
And honestly, that's what the wave is now. People wish harm upon their opposing brother just because that they're of the opposing mindset. There's no sitting down and talking. Like our socialism comes with like really a communism. So are socialist ideals a good thing? Yeah, there are some things there, especially in the future generations of AI, where you will primarily need at least some kind of socialist society to provide for those that, well, don't add anything to society. You absolutely will. Right now, I mean, that still doesn't really function because there are enough jobs for people to work. It's just some people choose not to work the jobs that are available, and they'll rather, whatever. It's always a problem. It's always a massive problem. But The fact that this happens all the time. People will hate their own brother just because of, like, so many people, like in the United States, there are streamers that have disowned their own family. There are streamers that will hate anyone. There are actors who will despise and wish the death upon anyone who doesn't agree with them. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. Why can't people just talk? Agree to disagree. There are positives. There are negatives. Not every single form of governance functions and never will truly function. Because guess what? We are the ones in charge. Us human beings, us frail human beings. The human condition just constantly gets in the way. Just constantly gets in the way. That's why I feel like, you know what, utilizing AI a bit more to actually remove some of the people in charge will probably be a good thing. They will just be automated. They will look at the numbers and be like, yeah, you know what? We need to cut things here. We need to cut things here. We need to put more aid here. These people that are getting funding, they don't need it. These obese people that probably could get a job, they just refuse to lose the weight. Maybe let's get them some drugs to lose the weight. Or get them a free gym membership. Get them a free gym membership. I think that would be enough. And then them not using it, them not it'd be on them. It'd be on them. Bro, China betrayed us so bad and it came out of nowhere too. Yeah, well, the borders were left open.
Communists still held out in a few places in India after this. 1962 really finished the potential for a pan-India communist movement, the last embers of which we will explore in our next chapter. So communists held out in three main places. The first was the South Indian state of Kerala. Here is the most stable and I'd say the most successful communist government in India by far. The CPI was democratically elected in Kerala in 1957, coming to power not through the barrel of a gun, but the ballot box. The reason for that is because the environment that Kerala was in. In the 19th, going into the 20th century, Kerala had some of the most extreme forms of caste discrimination India had ever seen. The lowest castes were not even allowed to share a street with a high caste person. This milieu eventually caused a religious reformation. Social reformers like Sri Narayan Guru fought for the rights of lower castes, used a specifically Hindu spiritual grammar to argue for it, emphasizing not only the oneness of Hindus, but also humanity. Even Christian groups, now a powerful force in Kerala, pushed for these changes as well. Following the Reformation, the rulers of Kerala, the princely state of Travancore, would double down on this social transformation by investing highly in education and social services. Thus, Kerala had a huge leg up versus most other regions in India when it came to various human development indicators, even since independence. However, the echoes of inequality still rang, especially when it came to Kerala's agrarian sector, which still saw a lot of this feudal caste dynamic play out. So by the time the CPI showed up, the soil had already been tilled by all these forces. The communists just planted their flag in it. Their first big move was land reform, redistributing land from landlords to tenants. This fundamentally transformed the agrarian dynamic we talked about. The leg up of Travancore was utilized by continuing to invest in education and health. Kerala today has some of the best literacy and health indicators in India. Thus, the idea of the Kerala model was born, where the government provided a large amount of welfare to uplift its people. However, not everything is rosy here. The Kerala model is actually predicated on massive amounts of remittances from abroad. Why do so many people from
That's what I was thinking. It's just like, where does the funding come from? Because you can't just do all this stuff from nothing. Like, I was curious, and then it gets to it, like, okay, so that's where it's at. Because again, you can't get something from nothing. You can't. As many people believe, free is not a thing. There is no such thing. There is no such thing. You can't get something from nothing. You can't.
Kerala migrate?
Physically
communism
impossible.
Empowered trade unions, which stifled industrialization and growth.
I'm gonna have like a mathematician in the comments and explaining everything to me. Yeah. Or my wife being like, excuse me. Yeah, but you can't get something from nothing. You just can't. You can't. I mean, I think the only equivalence of having something from nothing would be like God speaking world into existence, whether you believe that or not. It's just, you can't get something from nothing. Like, I've gone through the theories of like how the earth came to be. Like there's the universe where it goes to the point where it basically implodes on itself. Everything goes back to nothing and then it explodes out again. So it's like this constant yo-yo where it explodes and then implodes, and then explodes, and then implodes. That's pretty fascinating. But then again, where'd the first explosion come from? Like, you can't get something from nothing. You just can't.
Kerala does not have many homegrown businesses or jobs. This has actually made it fall behind more development and investment-oriented states like Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, and Maharashtra. And this trend has reached its crescendo just a few weeks back, when the CPI lost elections in Kerala, which means for the first time in Indian history, communists do not control a single state in the country. So how did the two other places fall? Well, our next destination is Bengal. Remember, it was Bengal that was a wellspring of revolutionary energy that first sparked the Indian independence movement. Back then, it was a lot more Hindu-coded, even Hindu nationalists. But by the time independence came around, Bengal, a famously intellectual and anglicized society, began an affair with Marxism. Marxism. Bengal had a massive amount of English speakers who interfaced with global intellectuals. At that time, Marxism was the it ideology of the world. So Bengal's elites turned left. Parallel to that was a similar agrarian crisis in Bengal, though not as caste-based and severe as Kerala.
I think I
but
saw
the most
those
underrated
videos.
factor in
I think I
communism's
saw the
rise
Pepsi
in Bengal
videos.
actually comes from across the border, in what was then East Pakistan. In 1971, Pakistan
I think I've only missed like one Pepsi video. I think that's there's only one I've never seen, but that's it.
began a genocide primarily aimed at the Bengali Hindus in East Pakistan. This led to a
This is my
massive
walking
refugee
cane.
crisis, swarming into the Indian state of West Bengal. Eventually, India stepped in
My
to stop
walking
the
cane.
genocide and defeated Pakistan in the 1971 war, leading to the birth of Bangladesh. Still, Hindu refugees continued to pour in. Experts estimate 300,000 to 3 million innocent people were killed by Pakistan, so many Bengali Hindus in Bangladesh still were shell-shocked from the barbarity and wanted safe haven in India. This caused a colossal economic crisis and a breaking point for the state. And here's where communists come in. They campaign on land redistribution and helping these refugees, as well as those already poor living in West Bengal. Thus, they stormed into power in 1977 and ruled the state for 34 years. But unlike Kerala, Bengal would collapse. The most developed region in India would close for business and be economically annihilated. Bengal's share of industrial production fell from roughly 30% at independence to under 4% by 2020. The most industrialized state in India became an afterthought. But even past that, what really makes the CPI tenure of Bengal unique is its level of violence. Booth capturing, shakedowns of businessmen, continuous electoral violence and intimidation would be normalized across Bengal under CPI rule. And even the CPI successors who defeated them, the TMC, resorted to similar types of wanton violence to wrestle power from them. So the CPI's biggest legacy in Bengal would therefore be twofold, making Bengal anti-business and a normalization of grotesque violence. The TMC continued all this aplenty afterwards, claiming both of these were Bengali culture or some crap. They just lost elections as well a couple weeks back. But here's where I want to dial in on this aspect. This maddening aptitude for...
In the end, I mean, it stops functioning. It stops functioning because people just stop paying into it. Things only exist as like you can look at the banking system. It only functions because people believe that the dollar has value. The second people start to think that that has no value, just like cryptocurrencies, it only has the values people believe is in it. As soon as people stop believing the Bitcoin or whatever doesn't have the value it has, it goes down, it drops. That's how you get these massive collapse because the bubble bursts. What was it, 2008 with the housing crisis? The bubble burst. They realized that this was just not functional, and the whole thing collapsed in on itself. And then so many people who were house owners literally had to go bankrupt and sell everything because they realized they couldn't afford it.
Violent force. Because our last holdout of communism epitomizes this, and that is the Naxals.
The Big Short. I think that's the movie. Great movie.
The start of Naxalism and the end of communism actually begins where we just left off, in Bengal. In the 1960s, the Naxalbari area of Bengal was the epicenter of peasant protests. What made this one a bit more unique, though, was that many of the protesters came from tribal communities. Now, Indian tribal communities have lived on the fringes of mainstream society for millennia, connected to it via things like commerce, labor, or military service, but never fully integrated. Anyway, major protests erupted in 1967. Many tribal peasants were protesting an arrangement that was basically bonded labor, and a situation where landlords could take pretty much anything they wanted from peasants at will. In May of that year, the protests reached their peak, and police would fire upon one such protest, killing 9 women and 1 child. This spark would engulf not just Naxalbari, not just Bengal, but a searing corridor that would reach a maximum extent of nearly 1/3 of India. They called it the Red Corridor, a scarlet scar that stretched from Nepal to Andhra Pradesh. For decades, large swaths of this area would not be under the control of the government of India. Instead, it was controlled by the Naxalites, by armed communists who wanted to mimic Mao Zedong's peasant revolution. For as these Naxalites spread, they proclaimed that the government of India was illegitimate, that it was a tool of capitalists and non-tribals used for oppressing the poor and tribals. This was a genuine communist revolutionary movement that saw not just massive success, but also violence. But before we get into the violence, how did they obtain so much land in the middle of a country? Was it really through brute force or something a bit more sophisticated? Well, parallel to the march of the Naxals in jungles, in Indian cities, communist intellectuals were gathering funds and whitewashing Naxal terror. They provided the typical NGO-type explanation for gruesome acts of violence and the killing of innocents. These urban Naxals, as they came to be known, would also connect with Chinese communist officials to wire funding and materials to their comrades in the countryside. Then they'd look west to Christian missionaries who also were helping the Naxals in a bid to convert them. So it was this wild situation where China and America were trying to rip the middle of India apart via a weird combination of Christianity.
Again, it's a proxy war. It's a proxy war. Like I always talk about it, like the US, China, Russia have always used other nations because they're the world powers, always used other nations as a form of fighting each other without openly declaring war. It's like a chess game, or I guess checkers, more like checkers. It wouldn't be chess. No, it's more like chess. Let's be honest, it's more like chess, not checkers. I'd lose at checkers for sure. Probably chess too. But that's the thing, it's like, that's always been the case. where nations that don't see eye to eye, world powers that don't see eye to eye, and even like third world countries will also use other nations as a battlefield for other nations they don't agree with, just to prove that their ideologies, their beliefs are more important. They're more important. It's yeah, that's just how it works. By the way, what do you think? In what area India should focus on to be better? Tell me your perspective. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know. Like the only things like the corruption, which again is everywhere. Pollution is really the only thing that's the biggest issue that for as a foreigner going to India that I see as a like something that just bothers me. It just bothers me. Is there pollution here in the United States? Absolutely. But then again, we just need to get rid of all the homeless, and then the pollution will kind of clear itself up a bit, not completely, a bit. But yeah, again, it's up for each state. Each state should be able to monitor themselves. There should be a governmental structure that the entire nation follows, and then the state should be able to dictate like states' infrastructure and things like that on its own. How much money it takes from the government, what the government is willing to allocate to each individual state, depending on the population of each state. There's so much that goes into that. Like you would need someone there who's more of an economist and can understand the in and outs of how that would function for each state to get its own. Like, yeah, everything would need auditing too. There would need to be universal auditing, state auditing, and then national auditing, and that needs to be done in every nation. I feel. I think every nation needs to have that, so that way people can keep track of where things are going, and that way the people can feel fully transparent with their government. When there's no transparency and people feel like they're being manipulated, that's where you lose people. In the United States of America, I feel like I'm being manipulated.
And communism. However, eventually people started to emerge from these Naxal areas as refugees. You see, the violence was getting absolutely insane. I'm talking about child soldiers, terrible sexual violence towards women, beheadings, derailing of trains, attacks on schools, roads, any infrastructure that would try to connect these Naxals to mainstream India. So soon enough, many of these tribals and former Naxals would become informants for the government of India. The government would then step up forces to counter these Naxals, something that would soon become a de facto guerrilla war. By the late 2000s, and especially the 2010s, the Indian government began crushing the movement through a combination of defectors, brute force, and most curiously, governance. The thing is, when the government would take over formerly Naxal areas, they would ensure proper schools, infrastructure, electricity, water access,
I can't sit down for a long period of time like that.
They'd never seen stuff like this. They also got bank accounts to get welfare if they were poor, which almost all of them were. The government also cracked down on foreign funding from missionaries and NGOs that would normalize and finance Naxal atrocities. And by March of 2026, the Red Corridor has shrunk to just a handful of districts. The communists were pretty much defeated. At least the violent ones. And this again is just another notch on that line of treason we've been seeing across Indian history when it comes to communism. Because while I think Indians are open to a bunch of communist ideas and policies, where Indian communism has gone wrong is that it is fundamentally anti-Indian. It hates the country of India, the idea of its civilization. It despises native Indian religions, and it wants to eradicate indigenous Indian culture. This is just...
Well, that's the problem with I guess that's just the problem with the communist ideal entirely. It doesn't like its own history. Like the same thing with the Democratic Communist Socialist Party. There's a deep communism social. I don't know. There's a party in the United States which is really starting to take an upswing. They hate America. They hate all it stands for. They hate the fact that it's based off Christianity. And again, there's nothing wrong with a nation being based off of religion as long as it's allowing others to be accepted and practice. Yet you can't claim that your religion actually allows you to break the law. That's where it's like there has to be a separation. There can be the acceptance of other people, but the people that travel to a nation need to understand what the laws of that nation are. Whether it's dictated by a religion or whether it's dictated by people, the people should follow it. There shouldn't be, again, what I hate, like one of the biggest things I hate about India. Okay, this is one thing I could talk about. Get rid of that multi-law policy. No way should somebody, just because they practice a different belief, should get different hearings, be perceived differently in court. Everyone should be treated the same. Everyone should be treated exactly the same. Maybe that could change from state to state where they can fudge the laws a bit, where it's like, okay, in this state, this is absolute. However, in this state over here, because it's more of I'll just say it, a Muslim population, it leans a little more this way. But everyone's treated the same. Whether they're Hindu, whether they're Muslim, whether they're Christian, it don't matter. That's how it should be. There should be like an overarching law, and then the state should be able to dictate, you know what? just because we're a little more of this population, we can fudge it a little more this way. Hot take, I guess.
Too much to stomach for most Indians, even if they like a lot of left-wing ideas. And it's in this last section where we have to explore this style.
Christian missionaries funding communism in India always tickles me. Yeah, it just sounds weird. Sounds like an oxymoron, but oh well.
Where while the Communist Party of India has crashed out, yet communism itself is still so influential in Indian politics.
It'll never go. Ghost in the shell.
The most underrated aspect of communism's failure in India is actually Nehru's embrace of it. Sounds strange, but think of it like a double-edged sword. For nearly 4 years after independence, India ran 5-year plans, state-owned industries, central planning, bank nationalization, the entire communist economic playbook executed by the Communist Party. The communists didn't lose the economic argument. They won it. They just weren't around to take credit. Marxist ideas spread across Indian academia, causing leftist theories of Indian politics and economics to dominate for decades. Eventually, the CPI would even ally with the Congress Party on many occasions. This sounds like an ideological victory, but it's actually a dilution. Because the Communist Party was so inept and traitorous, it could not capitalize on these ideological successes. Rather, the ideology was absorbed by other parties. Even today, right-wing parties like the BJP are very socialist when it comes to economics. Welfare and state involvement in the economy is basically
this video might be a bit older. It was published 3 days ago.
omnipresent across the Indian political spectrum.
Quickly how
culturally,
things
leftist
change.
ideas around caste and religion dominated Indian discourse for decades, only seriously challenged after the rise of Modi in 2014, as Hindu nationalism has come to the fore. But you want to know the strangest part of this whole story. I used to tease one of my progressive friends that Modi has done more socialism in one term than Bernie Sanders has in his entire life. And that's objectively true.
That is the truth. Like, again, what's funny is socialism cannot exist without a capitalism backing. How did those states that were a socialist or communist get their finances? They got it from the government, which was primarily capitalist. You cannot have socialism without the funds to provide for it. You either have one of two ways. You have socialist things in play that are monitored to make sure no one takes advantage of it, like they have in the United States of America, because people take massive advantage of like welfare fraud and things like that. You have to have capitalism in place that funds the socialism programs, or you're like Nazi Germany or like one of the world powers out there, where you literally have an entire slave labor force to do the tasks, because guess what? The slave labor force, you don't need to pay them anything. You don't need to worry about their health conditions. You just need to make sure they're working. You just need to make sure they're working, where they have concentration camps and they put them to work for them. Those are the only two possible ways for socialism to flourish, for communism to flourish. You have to have something there, a free labor force. That's why, like with the boost of AI, socialism and capitalism or communism will become more of a thing. Because guess what? It'll have to be. It'll have to be. But you can never get rid of capitalism because people will always strive for more. People will always strive to be the haves. There will always be those, the beggars that beg to receive things from everybody. But the world should be filled more with those who strive. That's at least how I see it. So communism cannot survive without a strong central leader. Communism in India weakened because old leaders expired and their replacement didn't have charisma. Well, yeah, you need a charismatic leader for sure. But there needs to be a way of them staying in power. Like, look at Mamdani in New York. He's begging the billionaires to stay. Why? Because you need money in a place to make it function. Without capitalism, socialism, communism, whatever it may be, cannot flourish. Cannot flourish. Plain and simple.
But there's something more to that. Recall that Gandhi took the revolutionary energy of independence from the communists. He stole their thunder, basically. Well, I believe that process is underway again. India is changing rapidly due to technology and modernity. It is undergoing a massive momentum of churn and change. And that is being capitalized upon by the Hindu nationalists now, not communists. In Kerala and Bengal, we are seeing CPI members switch their vote to the BJP. They even have a slogan for it, Ram before Vam. Besides the failure of the CPI, it's the fact that the BJP is now the party of change in India, while the left is the status quo. Because leftism and Marxism spread so broadly and deeply in India, it became the establishment and is associated with a lot of legacy problems in India. BJP and Hindu nationalism are in that way a wrecking ball to the incumbent. They are the revolutionaries now. They are the avatar of change. And after 3 successive electoral victories at the center and an Overton-shattering win in Bengal this year, the BJP and Hindu nationalism look like they are here to stay for a long time. So it's this ironic twist of fate once again. The energy of an Indian revolution has been captured by someone who speaks the language India actually understands. Not class, not materialism, but civilization, identity, and dharma.
I like that. I like that. Again, he gets to the point where it's like some socialist things aren't bad. Some communist things aren't bad. But you need to have a way of getting it to the people that need it. And you can't have people taking advantage of it. You can't have people taking advantage of it. I don't think communism can come to power again. No. The thing is, because more communist things have probably been done under Modi than really any other, because everyone has internet. Like, it's one of the fastest internets in the world is in India. Everyone has phone. Everyone has access. Like, so much stuff has been done for the people through capitalism, allowing socialist tendencies. Because guess what? You have the ability to consume. You have the ability to consume. So everyone has access to the same thing instead of it being piecemealed out to people. It's because you need to have something in order to get something. So it seems like all the things that communism and socialism tries to push, because it sounds good, can't be achieved because there's no way of getting something when everyone just expects everything for free. When nobody expects everything for free, every time everyone has access to everything. It's weird. It's weird because people realize they have to work for things, and then they get an income, and then they can actually afford the things they want, and then things go down in price. Like, again, there's so much that goes into it. I'm not an economics professor, okay? I'm not an economics professor, but just how it works. That's just how it works.
You guys see the video? It's so bad.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Wait like that.